Get ready to dive into the comic book realm where heroes rise and villains take the helm. We're here to dissect the stories and the art. On source material, we tear the panels apart.
Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the savage, the sensational source material.
The sexy.
The slottified source material, if you will.
The slutty.
I was wanting to take a look at the career of Dan Slott. I'm going to share a picture with you. That right over there's Mark. I'm Jesse. How's everybody doing? We're getting ready to jump into discussing She-Hulk. We're going to be looking at, I don't know what this trade's called, Mark. Is it just volume 1 or does it have a name?
It is She-Hulk by Dan Slott, the complete collection, volume 1, but I don't like it, so I called it She-Hulk, the complete Dan Slott collection.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm being pedantic.
This has the 12 issues of the 2004 run and issues 1 through 5 of the 2005 run. Anyway, so I go to look up his career, and I just want to point something out here. I'm going to throw this into our Facebook chat. You and our viewers and listeners may believe that you bear a striking resemblance to Dan Slott. I mean, you got the bald head, you got the beard.
Oh, I look like Dan Slott?
Yeah, apparently. I just threw it in the Facebook chat. Check it out. See what you think. Okay,
oh
there
my
you are.
God. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Sir.
That is me in a few years.
Oh, man. So this is Dan Slott handling She-Hulk in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. You ever read any Dan Slott that you can recall?
Yes, Jesse, we've had this conversation.
Let's have it again.
If you'll recall, he worked on that Spider-Man volume that I hated.
Oh, you didn't like it?
You don't remember this?
I'm trying to think of which one.
So it was after Spider-Man owned a company, and it was like a whole thing, right? And then Dan Slott takes over, and he's back to being a teenager.
Can't remember. This is after Superior.
Right up the wall.
Oh boy, yeah, it's been a while since I can remember what I remember. He had a huge run on Spider-Man, but yeah. So with She-Hulk, I assume you're in Ollie's, and you see this thing sitting on the shelf, right?
I got this. This wasn't an Ollie's pickup. This was a regular like Barnes. I think this was a Barnes.
Full price.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I love the She-Hulk character. And I heard that the quintessential She-Hulk was the Dan Slott run. Like the She-Hulk that everybody likes is the Dan Slott run. I bought this before the television show came out. I remember hearing that they were drawing a lot of inspiration from the Dan Slott run. If you watch the show, it's not perfect. I've already done a TV party on it. Alexis, Andrew, and I reviewed it. I came to its defense as best I could with some of the elements. You can definitely feel the Dan Slott run inspiration in the show. They stray away from it. There's a lot of modernity in there. There's a lot of agenda-driven woke culture type stuff, which drives me a little insane. But it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is. And I would say, at least in tone, it's probably the closest thing you're going to get to a Dan Slott She-Hulk.
Yeah, I remember enjoying what I watched of the series. I think I finished it out.
Did everyone in your house fall over and die when she dared? What is the tweet? Twerk. When she, sorry, words are hard right now. When she worked with Megan Thee Stallion.
Oh, I'm sure that the daughter loved that.
Yes, it's only angry comic book nerds, and only the fattest and neckbeardiest of the angry comic book nerds that had a problem with it. And the critical drinker who was leading the charge in his Napoleon hat.
He's got some kind of a flag. Curious as to what's on that flag. I loved how we definitely took the fourth wall breaking, which is what I remember of the previous She-Hulk series being, you know, her being able to break the fourth wall. And that kind of was in the series as well, which is a great way of paying tribute to what came before. Go ahead.
Modern iterations of She-Hulk were comedy books. I don't recall too many. I know that the early versions of She-Hulk, like the early Savage She-Hulk stuff, she's a much more serious character. I want to say maybe from John Byrne on, she becomes kind of like a Deadpool-esque jokey character, and her books are comedy books. For God's sake, she's teaming up with Howard the Duck.
Oh, yeah. Me and Evan Bevins took a few to sit down and talk about a couple. There was a 2 or 3 issue series, a storyline in her book where Howard the Duck was in it. And Steve Gerber was writing it. It was out there. It was crazy. So, yeah, I'm pulling up Dan Slott as a creator just to kind of give you an idea of what they have here on Mike's Amazing World of Comics. Mike's Amazing World has him starting out in 1991. he's been a Marvel guy I don't think he writes his first DC comic until 1995, it looks like. So about 4 years, he's steadily with Marvel. His first DC comics is Looney Tunes. He writes a story for Looney Tunes number 20. He does tend to write some wacky and silly stuff. Ren and Stimpy, Powder Toast Man. I don't know if you're a Ren and Stimpy guy.
I am aware that you should not pee on the electric fence.
Okay. And I mean, he's got some Ghost Rider under his belt here. But it looks like, Pinky and the Brain, Animaniacs. So he's really like involved in a lot of the Warner Brothers animation stories. That's pretty interesting. But yeah, he gets on She-Hulk here in 2004. His Spider-Man run doesn't start, I think, until 2000. Gosh, I want to say it's 2012. Nope. 2008. All right, let's talk about what's happening here. Our first segment's going to be the first 6 issues. Then the last 6 issues of the 2004 run will be the next. Episode 3 will be the first 5 issues of the 2005 run.
Time trials, baby.
Yeah, wow. Boy, oh boy, am I a fan. Count me in. So let me tell you about the creative team here on the book first. Issues 1 through 4 have Dan Slott, and Dan Slott is writing all of these.
Is in the title.
Believe it or not. Dan Slott writing, penciler Juan Bobbio, inker Marcelo Sosa, letterer David Sharp, and colorist Christopher Chuckry. This is issues 1 through 4. Issue 5 is penciled by Paul R. Pelletier and inked by Tom Simmons, colored by Brian Haberlin. Rest of the creative team remains the same. And then issue 6, the only thing that changes from that creative team is the inker becomes Roland Paris. So, all right, our first issue, we get introduced to She-Hulk and her partying ways. And the Avengers are getting a little tired of her stuff, especially Jarvis. Jarvis is a little tired of her coming in there and breaking things and him
For
having
God's sake, She-Hulk, stop whoring around.
There's an interesting bit where she's sleeping with like a model, a male model, but you could tell immediately right away that she has an issue with being, just plain old Jen Walters. She's got to be She-Hulk. She's got to keep that image up, and she's afraid. I wouldn't say afraid, but the man that she's involved with, she's afraid of not being She-Hulk around this guy. There's a bit where she wakes up after a night of fun, and he's laying with his arm on top of her, and she realizes she's Jen, and she's like, no, I've got to change back, and promptly changes back and throws him from the bed, which is hilarious. We get an idea of her. I put down here a life of indulgence and minimal responsibility, along with a bit of immaturity. It seems like she's got a little bit of growing she needs to do here. We can see in issue 1.
Did you ever see the movie Teen Wolf?
Yeah.
It's right out of Teen Wolf. Once you realize you have these superpowers and this is the version of you everybody likes, who wants to go back to being their old dumpy self?
Exactly.
And because she's She-Hulk and she's an Avenger and a former Fantastic Four member and a celebrity and a Richie Rich lawyer, she's just able to live it up, be a party girl. I wish the show had been handled better because there was some grist for the mill to talk about in a different way. The modern, successful, free woman, how does she behave? What does she learn about herself in the process? And that's kind of where we start with her.
Right.
There were many She-Hulks we could have talked. We could have talked about the John Byrne run.
Yeah.
We could have talked about Savage She-Hulk. We could have talked about any number of different iterations. I specifically wanted to do this one because it was in part a legal book. There's a lot of focus on her being a lawyer in this iteration, which I love. And want to know why, Jesse Starcher? Because I love a good legal drama.
Yes, you do.
And in another life where I made better choices than the one I made in this life, I become a lawyer.
You would have been a lawyer? Well, that takes some commitment.
Yeah, and probably better memorization of the brain than I've got. Words are hard. But yeah, I love a good legal drama. I love legal wrangling. I'm not litigious in the sense of I don't go around suing people, but you've been working with me for the year
at least 10.
25. Yeah, well, I think you started bothering me around the time my daughter was born. So probably 2011, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. Whenever I started doing the Metal Hammer of Doom, that's when you started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were already listening to the Casual Heroes of Times. So that has to be 2012, 2013. So you've been working with me for a long time now. I like a good argument.
You like to hear sides. As a matter of fact, I think there is a show on this network.
That is true, yes.
That is called On Trial.
Yes. Very sexy show called On Trial.
You hit that saxophone.
I wanted to do a joke about the lyrics of that, our intro, and I can't remember anything right now. Anyway, I very much like a nice legal argument. I like to pick out the minutiae of things, and I like to watch shows about it. I like to watch shows or movies where you're trying to win a trial or figure out some sort of legal precedent. All this stuff is very appealing to me. And that's all in this She-Hulk book. They lean very heavily on it.
Right.
The reason why I stopped you and said you have to bring this up, this is a pivotal point in the book. Right in issue 1 or 2, I think this comes up. The whole idea of getting all of your cases thrown out. For example, if it's found out that you were trying your cases and you were drunk at the time and no one knew about it, and it can be proved that you were and it gets somebody off, they can go back through your entire backlog of cases and throw the sentencing out. Right? I can't remember the exact detail in the book, but she loses a case due to the fact that she's She-Hulk. And it sets a precedent to where because she's working for the district attorney's office. So she's a prosecutor. Her involvement with the criminals as She-Hulk makes her unable to then prosecute. There's some sort of thing about she unethically can't deal with them in a court of law because she dealt with them as an Avenger. Which means that now every case that she's ever prosecuted is at risk of being thrown out. She gets fired from the district attorney's office.
They let her go.
Right, because she's useless now. And when she gets recruited by the best law firm on the East Coast, it is specifically, and this is right in the show, she is specifically recruited to deal with superhuman law cases. She's specifically there to deal with superheroes and supervillain cases, right? And they don't want her to do it as She-Hulk. They want her as Jen Walters, and there's a whole subplot about that they get into later. That's the impetus of the book. She is in love with being She-Hulk because she feels like it's her best self, to the point where, kind of like Bruce Wayne and Batman, her true identity is one that she doesn't see any value in. She's this mousy woman who could never bed the supermodel men as herself. She would never have the confidence that she does. None of this stuff would be happening in her life if she weren't She-Hulk. She doesn't want to be Jen Walters. She wants to be She-Hulk all the time.
She wants to be seen as She-Hulk.
And now she can't be. She has to actually be Jen Walters. She has to do her job as Jen Walters because She-Hulk in this role has no value. And she kind of has to learn to love herself as she is and not be utterly reliant on the She-Hulk identity, which I think is a brilliant piece of writing. I want to see if I can actually find what the actual thing is from the first issue. Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzman, and Holloway just successfully got a mistrial on the Paxton case. No freaking way. With the pounding. Shit. Oi, with the pounding.
Oi, vey.
In the series that I direct.
Okay, gotcha.
Oi, with the pounding and the She-Hulk here. Oh, God.
Oh, I can't take it no more.
2 days ago, you and the Avengers saved the lives of everyone on Earth. That included the last jury. It could be argued this gave you undue leverage over them, and that would explain their speedy verdict.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous precedent, Jen, and it could open a lot of old doors. I can't take that kind of pressure anymore, kid. Before you joined my team, I was a robust man with a full head of hair. God, he sounds like me. Now look at me. You're letting me go? I'm sorry, Jen, but in the end, the deciding factor was your attitude. We do serious work here. I am very serious. Jen, last night you crushed one of our copiers taking pictures of your butt. How did you know it was me? How could it could have been anyone? It was a color copier, Jen. So I love that idea of she's an Avenger. She saves people. Those people would be beholden to her to want to give her way. They'd be biased. Therefore, how can they possibly use her?
Exactly.
That's great writing.
Yeah. And then at the end of issue 1, the firm that she just lost to, the guy that owns that firm, Holden Holloway, shows up after she had been drinking in the bar with the Blizzard or whatever the heck his name is. I can't remember his name, but the supervillain that shows up there. Anyway, he offers her a job and she's, number one, awestruck. And then Holden says, look, I want you, but I do not want She-Hulk. I want Jen Walters.
It's just established that if she tries these cases and it's a jury trial, we've already said that it will sway the jury. Right. By the nature of who she is.
And then my favorite bit at the end of the issue is when she changes back to Jen Walters, promptly throws up on the guy that just offered her a job.
That's good shit.
And then passes out.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. As a Hulk, her body mass and metabolism, she can't get drunk. They actually said that in the show. Yeah. And then she changed back to Jen Walters. It's the same level of alcohol consumption in this dainty woman's body.
All of it comes out. So then we get to issue 2. Issue 2 is her getting ready to go for her first day at GLKH, I think is the name of the firm there. And she's trying to find something to wear. She's hanging out with Scarlet Witch and Janet Van Dyne. Scarlet Witch casts a spell, which is very important as it comes up later, because Jen's worried that people are going to attack Jen as Jen. because they know who she is, and she may not have a fair shot. She's not going to be in her She-Hulk form in order to defend herself. So Scarlet Witch casts a spell that says, okay, if anybody wishes to do She-Hulk harm, they cannot see you. They won't know that you are there.
There are so many Chekhov's guns in this series. So much stuff gets established in the first half that gets paid off in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. So her first day at Timely Plaza. Timely, by the way, is a nice little Marvel reference there. Timely Plaza, she's learning about that they do superhuman law. We see some of the people that she's going to run into. We get introduced to Awesome Andy, the awesome android, which used to be a supervillain, but is now working for the firm.
By the Mad Thinker.
We meet Ditto, who is a shapeshifter, who is a great process server.
He's a process server because he shapeshifted to someone in trust.
Right.
You know, it's like he shapeshifted to my kid or something and hands me something like, oh, you've been served. I'm like, God damn it, fooled again.
Then we learn about their legal records, which are actual comic books. In the bottom of the basement of this firm, they have legal records, which are comic books, and they use them to reference things all the time to help their superhero law practice.
Everything that happens in this world gets made into comic books. Those comic books are signed off on by current day Avengers. But what about the Avengers of antiquity? What about before they started doing this? Those are stamped by the
Comics Code Authority.
And that's a government oversight group, which makes them legal documents. This is my kind of comic.
And it's not just like this is a cute little reference, because this stuff comes up over and over and over again. There's at the end of this series, we're going to be going back to the archives and checking out these comics.
The thing that Gus says about trades, I was thinking about you. And like, some of the comic book guys I know, that is like, trades will be the death of comics. I'm thinking of Chris Bailey. Trades will be the death of comics, and I'm just sitting there like the book is amusing, but there were not many belly laughs out of me. There were not a lot of like laugh out loud moments. That got a laugh out loud moment out of me.
Yeah. All right, we get her first case, which is with Danger Man, where this guy gets turned into a superpowered individual, and he's just trying to get compensation because he feels that he didn't want what happened to him, and he feels that the company's responsible. He's
actually hurt his wife. I love the concept of a Danger Man type character, because what if any one of us suddenly got a superpower that was so powerful that if we don't know how to control it from the get-go, we hurt everyone around us? What if you don't have the mentality of a Captain America or Tony Stark or Clint Barton? Guy, you know, what if you just don't have it in you, but you are now given crazy powers, you know? So like, you're not a bad person, but you're not necessarily wanting to be a hero either. What are you supposed to do with this? It gets argued in the book that the company he got the powers from caused him harm by changing his body into this being with superpowers. Because we take for granted that if you ever got superpowers, your life would be awesome.
Right.
You know, if you're accidentally hurting everyone around you because you don't know how to control what you're doing, it costs you money and medical bills, it costs you your job, you know, it's all kinds of things. That's one of the things I really liked about this book. It deconstructs and editorializes the genre of superheroes without being all mopey about it the way Alan Moore tends to be. Dan Slott's approach to deconstructing comic books and superheroes is a much brighter and happier and interesting way of doing it than the Garth Ennis version, which tends to be super bleak. He's the guy that did The Boys.
Right. I think a lot, and we're only on issue 2 here, but a lot of what you get with this whole series. Be prepared to
record for the next 9 hours. I have so much to say.
A lot of what we get in these issues are statements or commentary on identity, like how you look at yourself, how other people look at you. And that's definitely on spotlight here with Danger Man, how he sees himself. His wife at one point is just laying in bed thinking that he's going to go off and be a superhero. And, you know, he's going to bet all these beautiful super ladies. And that's not what he wants to do. And at that point, when the climax of that issue is when him and She-Hulk just about, you know, have it out. They're about to fight, and she changes into Jen Walters because she knows that he does not want to hurt anybody. And
he's committing suicide is what he's doing.
Right. He's destroying himself. And she's like, no, if you're going to do this, you're going to take me with you. And I know you don't want to do that. Yeah. And he finally gets him to back down. And then, of course, she goes into court and is able to win the legal battle by saying that, okay, yeah, on this date that he turned into the superhero, he was dead. You essentially killed him. And She-Hulk's arc here, by the end of issue 2, you can tell she's getting a little bit more comfortable with herself as Jen Walters. Going into issue 3, this is the issue with Bailey Briggs, the guy that ends up getting killed and then proceeds to testify as a ghost for himself, which is great. We have our first appearance of Pug. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Pugiles. just
Yeah.
goes by Pug. I feel so sorry for Pug.
That is me and every guy I've ever known.
There's a moment
Hey,
where
I'm helpful and good, and I love you, and you keep going with another guy.
yeah. Jen's worried in this issue that the firm only brought her in because of her superhero contacts. She felt that maybe that would help her. She thinks that they believe that would help them win cases. And so she feels kind of manipulated and used a little bit. There's a great moment.
That's going to get worse.
There's a great moment where She-Hulk goes back into the Avengers Mansion, which, by the way, she had left when she walked in.
They were like, please, you can't live here anymore. You
right.
Get out. So she's living in like an apartment building owned by the law firm.
She ends up going back into Avengers Mansion. There's a moment where the security system goes off and Jarvis comes running out here. And you may not get the reference. I don't know. But Jarvis has a pot on his head. And he says it's made of Forbushian alloy, which have you ever heard of Forbush? I think it's Forbush Man. Have you ever seen like a superhero with just a pot on his head and he had the eyes? Okay, yep. That's Forbush Man. So there you go. I thought that was hilarious.
I'll tell you, because Jarvis was never a person in the Marvel movies, it was always an AI. People have really missed out on the character that Jarvis was from the Avengers comics. He was a fun character. I kind of want a one shot of just a drama, a very talky drama of him talking to Alfred.
Yes, please. All right. And then in this issue, the case goes live. They're trying to figure out how to justify putting Bailey Briggs on the stand as a ghost. And they bring up the snap to kind of legitimize, like, hey, almost half the population, I believe half the population of the earth was snapped away and they've come back. Are they all dead? And that was a neat little twist. We learn who kills Bailey Briggs at the end. He ends up accusing his girlfriend.
They really do spend a lot of time on legalese. It's not so dense that it's impenetrable by the average person. Right. It is a comic book for 10-year-old. But I love the fact that they played around with, can a dead person testify? What is the legal definition of dead?
Right.
Especially because most of us aren't dealing with ghosts, AI, robots running amok, magic, or time travelers. At least I'm not. I can't speak for the rest of you. Or mutants, for that matter. But in this world where these are an everyday occurrence, where magic, future technology, and time travel all exist in the same place and it is common as the rain, they have to sit there and talk about. And that's the thing. It was like when AI first became a thing, or I'll go back even further, when cloning, they were successfully able to clone animals, and Congress tripped over themselves to write laws about what you could do with cloning so that we didn't have, multiple man issues.
Right.
There was a special session of Congress to deal with this because they did not want suddenly there to be no laws and people just cloning whatever in science running amok. Same thing with AI. One of the things about the writers and actors strike from last year was we have technology now that can replicate people and create art. And the entire entertainment industry went, no, you don't. You're not putting me out of work. And that was what the whole fight was over, trying to create definitions and legal precedences for this new technology. And so one of the things the She-Hulk book does is it deals with that. It's like, okay, we know there are ghosts. We know ghosts can communicate with us. There's a wizard tangentially working for this. Like Doctor Strange tangentially working for this law firm. This is a thing that exists. We have to actually deal with it now.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool stuff to me. Like, I don't know. I don't know if every neckbeard who reads comics thinks it's cool, but I do. I like that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's fun to watch them take this real world approach to this fictional world. Like, okay, has to be some type of legal entity and law here. How do we handle that?
I've been saying for the longest time that when you break the fantasy, people's investment in the fantasy goes away and they go on to something else. Which is why a lot of these IPs are losing money and they're not able to successfully produce stuff people want to buy. This contributes to the fantasy because this now feels like a real world that I can invest myself in. I'm going to go ahead and say this is one of the best books I've read in a while. I love this. Was everything awesome about it? It was quite the page turner? No. But in terms of the level of writing, my interest levels, and making me feel like I escaped to a different world that felt lived in, real, and four-dimensional, most successful book I've read.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, for the once I'm not going to complain about something. Mark the date, everyone.
You're getting into issue 4. Issue 4 is the Spider-Man appearance. Spider-Man shows up. He is suing Jameson for libel.
Yep.
Which is great. And then things go south when Ditto serves Peter Parker
Right.
a subpoena to show up at the trial. And then at the trial, Pug's like, I'm bringing you into this suit. I'm suing you as well. And so Spider-Man shows up and he's like, I think I'm going to drop the case now, which is hilarious. I thought that was pretty funny.
Spider-Man pouting as they're settling the case that J. Jonah Jameson has to stand in a chicken suit and issue apologies.
Yes.
But he can't get any money. Yeah, just to make people understand that. So Pug's whole thing is Peter Parker's pictures contributed to the libel that Spider-Man was a menace to the city. If you don't have the pictures, you don't have the contributing art to go with the headlines.
Right.
Spider-Man's a menace. They're suing J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle, saying your paper has continually libeled my client, saying he's a menace to this city, when there's nothing but evidence saying he has helped the city one day after another. These are out and out lies. And Peter Parker contributed to that. Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
He's now suing himself.
Which is so good.
So he can't contribute with the suit, and he basically has to settle for no money, but he's like, at least issue an apology, and so they do, and it's a good thing with J. Jonah Jameson in a chicken suit.
Yeah. Issue 5 introduces us to Southpaw, Holloway's granddaughter. Holloway wants, I think, Southpaw in his custody. Now, this sets up, because she was at the big house, which they call it the big house, but basically what they do is take PIM particles and shrink all these villains down to ant size, and that way they can house them in one big facility that's really tiny.
His legal argument is, and this is very true actually, as I mentioned before, I work for a correctional institution. You cannot put a juvenile and an adult prisoner in the same room at all. When they're in booking, they have to be segregated. They have to be walked through the process. They have to be escorted with a deputy. The deputy cannot leave them alone. They cannot sit by themselves. When they are done with that process, they have to be put in a holding cell. When they get to the main jail, they have their own unit. If they have to come into a clinic or anything, they have to be with a deputy the entire time, or to be entirely segregated. You cannot put juveniles in with adult prisoners. Period. The end.
The end.
Enter the situation with Southpaw. She's a 15-year-old girl, and her grandfather, who runs this law firm, is like, you can't put her in this prison. They have no facility set up for juveniles. They treat her like an adult, and he was like, you have no legal right to treat her as an adult. She's not an adult, and you can't hold her here. And so that's what he's bringing to court, that they have to move her to a different correctional facility. They have to either release her on probation or put her with juveniles. And the problem is she's got this big-ass fucking glove on that they can't get off of her. So there's no juvenile institution that'll hold her.
Holden basically gets her out of there, but there is also a prison break that happens. The Mad Thinker talks to her before Holden shows up, and she's part of helping them escape, which entails them shrinking down to very, very, very minute size and going onto She-Hulk's hand and riding her arm all the way out of the facility. So then we hit issue 6, which resolves the breakout story. Awesome Andy, all he wants to do is watch a Mets game. That's all he wants to do. There's a point where he goes back home and he rooms with Ditto, and Ditto's like, I recorded the game, Yankees, right? And Awesome Andy just bows his head. He just walks
You're
off.
right.
He runs into Jack Black on the streets, which is pretty funny. Jack Black sitting there playing his guitar. Holloway wants Dr. Pym to return Southpaw back to her regular size. There's an elaborate plan for the villains that end up escaping. They're wee tiny on her hand, and then they start to get embiggened. At one point, they're action figures, not doll size, they're action figures. And they're causing some trouble. The Mad Thinker tries to get Awesome Android to go back to his evil ways. I love the fact that he thinks things through, and you could see Awesome Android thinking about his life with the people at the firm versus what his life was like with the Mad Thinker.
He's appreciated and valued with the firm.
Right.
He's treated as a person.
So much so, he just punches the Mad Thinker, and then the Mad Thinker's head promptly comes off. And it turns out he's an android himself. And then Southpaw ends up helping save her grandfather from the UFOs, which was some of those prisoners that had escaped. And that's kind of where we end issue 6. We're able to send everybody back to prison. They're able to resolve all that. Southpaw is now under the guidance, I believe.
As a condition of her release, she has to live and shadow She-Hulk.
There we go. There's the first 6 issues of She-Hulk by Dan Slott. So, okay, what are you thinking of these first 6 issues, man?
I love them. I'll just say this. When they announced the She-Hulk show and they was like it was going to lean heavily on the Dan Slott stuff, everyone thought we were going to get this. that
Mhm.
every episode there would be some like crazy legal thing that She-Hulk was dealing with, and that there was going to be a lot of like playing around with superhuman law. The show kind of strays away from that. She has a couple of weirdo court cases, one involving Daredevil, but towards the end they were trying to do some other stuff with it, and it's not as good as it could have been, to say the least. But I love this. I love that there's so many different interpretations of treating this world like it's real and what the implications of a world filling up with superheroes looks like and feels like, and how do you deal with that with everyday stuff, with the law. I like the fact that Dan Slott's asking deep questions. He's doing it in a very entertaining and silly way, but I wouldn't necessarily call the book a parody either. These are really solid stories, and I really enjoyed the first 6.
Yeah, I did want to mention one other character that gets introduced in issue 1, and that's Mallory Book. The Face, I think, is what they call her, who is one of the lead attorneys before
the face
Jen.
that wins the case, baby.
There it is, the face that wins the case. So she's like one of the lead attorneys, and she's obviously a thorn in Jen's side there at the beginning of things, but now they're
She's threatened by her.
partners.
Yeah. Look, as we all know, women of equal stature and value don't like each other. Women not into competing with one another.
No.
And so, she's the cock of the walk, the talk of the town, and in walks this bitch. She's the new flavor of the bunch. She's like, fuck this lady.
Not a fan.
No.
Well, but yeah, as for myself, I really enjoyed these first 6 issues. I loved the world we were getting into and seeing that real world thought process being placed into this fictional world and how things turn out.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.